you suspect your plant has root rot? Well, then you're going to want to watch this video until the end to find out how to prevent and even eliminate this all too common problem that can plague houseplants and lead to wilting, yellowing leaves, and eventually death. In this video, we'll go over the symptoms of root rot, how to treat for it when your plants have it, and various ways to prevent this problem altogether. Okay, so let's first start by getting an understanding of what root rot is. And there are actually two causes. And the first cause is overly damp soil. Standing water or poor drainage leads to soil that's too wet, which leads to roots of your houseplant sitting in the saturated soil, not able to absorb oxygen, and essentially drowning. The second cause of root rot is a fungal infection. This begins the same way, since fungi grow in moist soil. However, in this case, the soil doesn't need to be as moist for as long as it takes for the first cause of root rot. And when fungi is the culprit, it's primarily caused by various species of fungi, including Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, and Fusarium. But what you really need to know is that these guys are really bad news. These fungi thrive in moist conditions and can leave your houseplants vulnerable to infection, especially those plants that are overwatered, are in a soil mix that's not ideal for that particular houseplant, or houseplants that are placed in containers without proper drainage. And the way root rot works is by affecting the plant's root system. And when it does, it prevents our plants from efficiently absorbing water and nutrients, and then ultimately can kill the plant. Okay, so now that we know what root rot is, the next thing I'm sure you want to know is, what are some of the common symptoms to look out for to see if my plant even has root rot? One of the first signs that your houseplant may have root rot is wilting or drooping leaves, yellow leaves, or leaves with brown edges. And this happens because, as I briefly mentioned before, the diseased roots are not capable or have limited capacity to provide sufficient water and nutrients to the upper parts of the plant. Now, if you see wilting or yellowing leaves, does that mean you have root rot? Definitely not. There could be something else going on with your plant, and maybe it's root bound. But if you feel that everything else is in check, then root rot could be a possibility. Another symptom a plant that has root rot might display is stunted growth. Affected houseplants often slow down in growth and may even stop growing altogether. Again, there could be another reason that the growth of your plant has stunted, but stunted growth is definitely a sign of root rot, and we need to find out so we can treat it accordingly. Now, after hearing these symptoms and the possible causes, you're probably saying to yourself, if all these symptoms could have different causes, then how am I ever going to figure out what's wrong? And you're right, it can be confusing. But when you're diagnosing a problem with your plant, the more you know about the plant and the possible causes, the better you can diagnose the problem. Because sometimes, to be honest, it will take some digging and a little trial and error. Now, the two previous symptoms were those that you can see without ever removing the pot from the plant, which is what most of us see on a day-to-day basis unless you have clear pots. But once you see the previous two symptoms and suspect root rot, then inspect the roots of your houseplant. And when you do look at the roots, look for firm, white, or light colored roots, which indicates a healthy root system. If instead you see that the roots appear brown or black, are soft to the touch, and maybe even have a foul smell to them, then this is a clear sign that the plant has root rot. Once you've dug in and identified root rot in your houseplant, it's important to take immediate action to not only stop it before it gets worse, but also to prevent spreading it to the rest of your plants. So start by isolating and removing the infected houseplant from the vicinity of the other plants to prevent the disease from spreading by fungal spores, which can become airborne and affect plants that are nearby. Also, especially when you suspect root rot, make it a point to disinfect your water meter when going from one plant to another. And if you bottom water when you suspect root rot in a plant, then I recommend you use a different container to bottom water your plants that are affected, or use top watering to avoid using the same bowl for all your plants and spreading the pathogen. Okay, so once you've isolated your plant, you're ready to start treating the plant. And if all the roots are diseased, then it might unfortunately be unsalvageable. But if you still see some solid, light-colored, healthy roots, then there might still be a chance to save the plant. So I'll start by removing the soil from the roots of my plant. I'll use my hands to remove the bulk of it, careful not to damage the healthy roots we have left. And to remove the rest of the soil, I'll take the plant to a sink or a hose and gently wash it all off. Again, trying to be as careful as I can to not damage the good roots. We've cleaned the roots, and now I'll grab my pruners and carefully trim away any damaged or diseased roots I find. When I do this, I try to take my time and make sure I remove all affected areas to help increase my chances of a successful rescue. I'll grab a spray bottle with 3% hydrogen peroxide in it, not diluted, spray the roots down. I don't wash it off, and this will kill the pathogen. Now get some fresh, well-draining soil that I previously mixed up and find a pot that's just a little bigger than my root system and pot my plant into this new pot. Once it's repotted, I like to put the plant under medium and direct light to give it a chance to recover and keep the soil slightly moist but not drenched, and also not allow the soil to dry out completely. I know, it's a balancing act. Now in the future, to prevent root rot on this plant and others, there are a couple things you can do. The first thing is to ensure your houseplants are potted in containers with proper drainage holes. If you're keeping the plant in a catch pot, then also after watering, make sure to toss out any excess water that may have drained from your potted plant. When it's time to repot your plant, or if you notice that the soil the plant has in it right now is not right for the plant, then try to purchase or create a soil mix that'll provide the right amount of drainage for the plant you're caring for. If it's a plant that likes to be on the dry side, then maybe you add a little more pine bark, perlite, or pumice. And if the plant likes for the soil to hold a little more water, then look to ingredients like coir or peat. And probably the reason you're watching this video is because of overwatering. Water your plants by allowing the soil to dry slightly between waterings. How much you want to let it dry out really depends on the species and variety, so do a little research and you'll also learn from experience. Now, all this talk of overwatering has me thinking, if you're here, you probably have a heavy hand and overwater often, and you may be battling fungus gnats. So watch this video next so you know how to control those little pests and they don't get the best of you.